This is Jason Clement, Director of Field Application Engineering at Hanwha Vision America, and this training video will be the NVIDIA Jetson with Wave and optional NVIDIA AI analytics. The first part will be actually going into the Jetson, getting Wave up and running and ensuring everything is working correctly. The second part will be the optional NVIDIA analytics, licensing them, enabling them, and getting them up and running as well. So to understand this platform, it is one physical camera, but it is actually two logical different pieces. You have your normal camera that you would log into via the IP and add to whatever partner VMS that you're using, whether it's ours or whether it's Milestone or Genetech or any of our other partners out there. Then you also have the NVIDIA Jetson portion, which is a full Ubuntu Linux operating system. So this is essentially a full server that is running out on the edge with the GPU for running these different AI platforms. In this case, we're running WiseNet Wave, and we have our NVIDIA plugin that goes right into Wave that can run additional AI on non-AI cameras. So looking at it, basically we have our Cat6 that's plugged into the camera. We assign it an IP address on the LAN like we normally would, and we have everything that we would normally see in the camera itself. Going a step further, inside there we have the NVIDIA Jetson running, and essentially the camera is a firewall slash router slash does network address translation to the Jetson. So you can see there you have a different IP scheme. Nothing to worry about, it's just how it's set up on the back end, and then essentially it allows it to port forward anything that we're working on in NVIDIA Jetson. In this case, it's going to be Wave, which runs on port 7001, and then Cockpit, which is a Linux administration interface on 9090 that you can connect to through a browser. And then we also have SSH enabled by default. You can go in and disable it, but it is necessary sometimes when first setting up the camera, especially if you want to run any command line into the camera, which you can do through Cockpit as well. Next, let's take a look at getting this up and running and started. First thing we need to do is get the camera configured, because that's going to give us access into the NVIDIA Jetson. So we're going to go ahead, it needs a password. I found it on a network here with our WiseNet device manager. We'll go ahead, log in, and we'll set password to our camera. So now we have the password set, so we'll go ahead and double click to open it in a browser. And I just have the cap on it, so there's no video there. That's why it looks like that. I'll go to date and time. This is the first thing you always want to do, aside from configuring an IP address and pushing in the initial password, is make sure that your date and time is correct. So I'm going to set mine to GMT -5. It's going to go ahead and just auto apply. We're going to go ahead and enable DST because I am in a DST area. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to synchronize it with the NTP server. I'm just going to push it to pool.ntp.org. On a larger site, the customer may have an actual NTP server that you can point to, but this is extremely important, not just for this camera, but for any camera or any network device. If it has a time setting, it should be synchronized with something. Before we leave the camera, let's go ahead and go into IP and port, and then click on the port tab here and ensure that our bridge and port mapping are both set up. So port mapping is basically network address translation. So we want to get into SSH on the Jetson, which is port 22. So we map it to 2222. So when we go to connect to this IP address, .56, we go to 2222. It will forward us to the SSH port on the Jetson if we want to get in there. If you just want to disable that, you can just go ahead and delete that so you can't get in there anymore. So if I go ahead and delete it now, you can't SSH into the Jetson anymore at all. I'm going to add it back in. So there, 22, apply, and it's back in. By default, any other ports, it's just going to bridge through. So for example, in a little bit when we get into the wave web interface. We're just going to go to port 7001, which is the default wave port, and it just bridges that through. Now you can go in here and you can close this out and you can restrict this as much as you want. If you don't have a full IT team that's maintaining this infrastructure, I would recommend just keeping the bridging and port mapping just as it is. Just make sure that everything is set up there and it's not unchecked or anything. So from there, we're actually going to go into the NVIDIA Jetson, and we're going to IP address of the camera. And if you remember from the previous slide, we're going to go to 9090, which is cockpit, which is our web browser-based administration to get into the OS. The username and password is just NVIDIA, all lowercase. Go ahead and click login. It's going to ask us to change the password immediately, which is best network practice for security. So we first have to put in our current password, which was NVIDIA, and then what do we want our new password to be? So I'm going to go ahead and put in my password. We'll log in. I want us to confirm it. And we are set. So now we're into the actual operating system. So I don't want to load that. The first thing we need to do is go into our here and turn on administrative access so that we can get into what we need to get into. Go ahead and put in our password and authenticate. And now on the server too, since it is a separate operating system from the camera, it needs its time synchronized. So I'm going to go ahead and click on system time. Go ahead and put this to America. And I think there's a Detroit, which is closest for me. And then we'll automatically sync using NTP. I'm going to do specific NTP servers. Which I know is an NTP on my network. So go ahead and change that. Just had to refresh the page to get it to come in. So once we get that set up, now we're good to actually be able to connect into Wave. And now we're going to log into Wave via the web page. So port 7001 is which Wave uses for pretty much everything. And because it's a self-signed cert, it's going to say it isn't private, but that's fine. We're just going to go ahead and continue. And this is going to ask us to set up a new system or add it to an existing system, just like any Wave system. Now, Auto Discover will not work because if you remember, the camera acts as a router, and Auto Discover in Wave is basically a broadcast, so it's going to stop here, and so the broadcast doesn't go out onto the actual LAN. So you cannot use Auto Discover when you are using the NVIDIA Jetson. And go back here, we just set up a new system like normal. We'll call this NVIDIA. Go to advanced system settings here if you want to, and go ahead and we can just turn that off because it's not going to do anything for us anyways in this case. Click next, next, and then we set our master password here. And now our system is ready to use. So now I can open the Wave client. And you can also use the Wave client to initially access it as well. You just have to manually enter in the information. And we'll go ahead and connect to our server. Make sure your IP and your port are correct, and then put in your username and password. Go ahead and click test. Now if you get a certificate error here and it's asking you to click trust the certificate, then that means that the time is not synced on the Ubuntu server on the NVIDIA Jetson. So make sure that that time is synced and then come back in here and you should be fine. The problem is it generates a certificate with the wrong actual year. So we're okay, click OK, and now we're in there. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and right click on the server, go to add a device,
Now we're going to use the internal IP of the multi-sensor camera, which is 203.0.113.1. This way, if the device is still powered up but loses network connectivity somehow, then it will still be able to record the 4 streams on board the camera itself. If you point it to the other IP address, the LAN side IP address for the customer's network, then that will break if they lose connectivity. Go ahead there. We'll just add all devices. There. And there's our camera. I'm going to go ahead and add another device that's on the actual, customer side of the network. 47. This camera I already have all set up, so we can just go ahead and search for it. And we'll go ahead and just add the device. And I just have a sheet of paper in front of it, and it's blocking its view. So now that we got the cameras added, you can go ahead and add again up to 12 more channels onto this for a total of 16. We're going to go ahead and go to System Administration, and we're going to license this. On the back of the NVIDIA camera is a sticker with your Wave license. So you just want to be able to type that in. I have it in a notepad here, so I'm just copying and pasting it. We'll go ahead and activate it. Now, if you don't have a internet connection to this camera, you'll have to do a manual activation. So basically, you want to get this hardware ID, copy it, and then take all your licenses and go to our support portal and submit a ticket through there and say, I have this Wave hardware ID and I want these licenses activated to it. And they will go ahead and do that, and they'll send you a file, and then you just get that file here on any Wave client that's connected to the NVIDIA Jetson, and you can upload that file and get activated that way. Mine has internet activity or internet connectivity, so don't need to do all that. But I am going to activate another license here, basically a trial license, just so we can show all the cameras recording. The reason it comes with just one professional license is because it's a multi-sensor 4-channel, so you're getting all 4 channels on one license for that camera, because Wave, as long as it's a single IP, it will, in general, just use one license, one professional license. So now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to just shift-click these all, go to camera settings, go to recording, we'll flip on recording for this. And I'm going to go ahead and say, we're using a lot of AI here, so we'll do recording on motion and objects. I'm going to leave it at 15 frames per second, which is fine. I'm going to set the quality at medium. This quality is a little misleading. It's not really quality. It's really just setting the VBR cap. So medium is actually our recommended settings for bit rates. So it's fine to just go ahead and drop that down. You can run it at high or best, but you're really just utilizing more storage space for about the same quality of video. So once we have that set up, we can just go ahead and click apply. And this will come up and everything will start recording there for us. Next, we want to check on our storage on our Ubuntu server. So we'll go ahead and click Server and then Storage Management. And this device has 2 drives on it, so we need to map the secondary drive. You may not need to do this. You may have both drives already there, but it's always best, Wave practice, to just double check to see that it has all the drives and that it's not writing to the operating system drive. So we'll go ahead and click OK here, and then we need to go to Cockpit, and we'll go ahead and mount this, and I'm just going to call this Storage 1. And we don't want any of these options. We definitely want it to mount if it reboots, so we don't want to check anything there. So we can just go ahead and click Mount. And that should mount our drive for us. Next, we got to restart the Wave services. So we'll go ahead, we'll go to Services. When you come here, you have this page, just type in Hanwha, and you'll find the Hanwha Media Server. Go ahead and click that, and then click your three dots there and go ahead and restart it. This will restart the wave service and it should recognize our new drive. So now we'll go back to wave. We can see that it restarted there. We'll right click, we'll go to server settings, and there's our other drive. Now it does tell you that analytics data can take up space and to not save it on that drive, so we'll go ahead and click on this one and we'll use the other drive to store that analytics data, and then that'll clear that error up for us. So that's getting the drive mounted. Now we're set. We have the full capacity of both of our drives to record video to.